Hello and welcome to the Change Podcast. I'm Brent and I get the privilege of being here with my friend Francine Sinclair today. We're just pumped to have her with us, and it is going to bless you all just hearing not only about her encounter with the Lord, but just what she's done to walk out her change after she was changed. And Francine, just thank you so much. So excited that you're here with us, and I'm just going to turn it over to you. I'm going to let you start. And this is just going to be a fun time for people
Yeah.
just to digest everything that you want to share with them today. It's going to be awesome.
I'm just really happy to be here because Brent is one of those people who you would never expect to be like really jive with. Because we're like, there's this difference in age. He's a white boy. I'm a black lady. He lives in Virginia. I live in the South. I'm Puerto Rico, all these things. And like, just by looking at people, you're like, we're probably not going to be the best as friends, but when you've become a disciple of Christ, all of those things just fall away.
That's right.
Right? It's
Yeah.
just that one central thing, which is Jesus, that all of a sudden, every other thing, race, age, gender falls away, and you have an important commonality. So I'm really happy to be here. Sincerely, very happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, the pleasure's mine, and everyone that's getting a chance to digest this today, they're going to love every minute of it. I'm sure of it. So will you mind just starting off with where you feel the Spirit taking you, just as far as like, your encounter, and then we'll just go from there.
Yeah.
Just go from there.
So, Brent, I came from a Catholic background. I actually grew up in Puerto Rico with my grandparents. And my grandmother was a devout Catholic. My grandfather didn't go to church. He was
Sure.
like, I don't believe in any of that stuff. My grandmother was a devout Catholic, and she was actually being groomed to be a nun by her mother, but her mother passed away suddenly. And then, so back in those days, I'm thinking maybe the early 40s, she decided to get married. And so her whole thing was, church, 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 church. And she had me signing up for everything in church. So I was in Catholic church all the time. So much so that when the Pope, John Paul II went to Puerto Rico in like 1982, I was like, I don't know, 7 or 8, something like that. Calculate my age there. She made me walk it was like 6 or 7 miles from our house to go see him because there was no way to get through traffic. So there were a lot of people walking. And I was like, it was so excruciating. I was so tired. And, when we got there to the stadium, I had then to get in a queue to kiss the Pope's ring. And then when I got there and I smelled his ring, it smelled like saliva. And I was like taken aback because as I grew up Catholic, it was all about, we saw the Pope, or at least I saw the Pope as kind of like God on earth, or God, the intercessor between God and us.
Sure.
And when I smelled, because there were like 1,000 people before me who had kissed that ring.
Yeah.
And I was like, if he's like God on earth, why does his hand smell? And so
That's awesome.
it started to kind of erode I'm like, wait, something's weird. Something's not right. And it wasn't until I was 18 that I decided to leave the Catholic Church. It was all about Mary, prayed the rosary. I prayed to Mary. To be honest with you, I never prayed to Jesus. I didn't know I was supposed to pray to Jesus. I prayed to Mary because it was just like, oh, she's a woman, I'm a girl kind of thing. So I kind of felt more comfortable with it. But then after 18, I was less, one time I was in a confession confessing.
Yeah.
And after about 20 minutes of rambling on, I asked the priest something. And I realized that he did not hear anything of what I said. I'm here spilling my guts out. And I realized that he was not paying any attention whatsoever to anything I said. And suddenly I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, I could just pray to God directly. Why am I doing this? So I stopped going to church altogether for many, many years, Brent. It wasn't like I had serious church hurt, but it was like I was offended. I guess it was church hurt. Some people have different degrees of church hurt. Some have a lot of animosity because they had serious experience. for me, it was just like, I don't get this thing with the Pope. And I don't get why I need to be talking to a priest about my sins if he's not even listening to me.
Yeah.
And so I dabbled in Buddhism, but it didn't work for me ever because I could not concentrate to meditate because my mind is so busy all the time. So I dabbled in Buddhism. I just straight up just didn't practice any religion at all. It was completely secular. Never stopped believing God and that Jesus Christ existed. So I always thought I was a Christian just because I had been baptized when I was a baby, because I did
Sure.
believe that Jesus had existed and that God exists. But I felt like God was kind of like out there in the sky somewhere, and that he just kind of left us to our own devices and wasn't really involved until you die and you went to go see him. Kind of like
Sure.
that, you know? Didn't think it was even possible to have a relationship with Jesus. Like, how is it possible? Jesus is gone. He's up there in the sky somewhere, like he probably doesn't even remember. Like, if anybody brought my name up to Jesus or God, they'd be like, who? Oh yeah, that girl. Like, like that was my idea. And unfortunately for me, that's how I just brought up my children that way, because my husband also came from a Christian Catholic background. But we weren't practicing Catholics. And I always told my children that, yes, God exists. But that was about it. I didn't really bring them up as Christians because I was secular. And it wasn't until 2020, the year of reckoning, that, we were in lockdown and all this stuff was happening. And I was already a bit of a conspiracy theorist.
Sure.
Because, my son was born with severe food allergies, like anaphylactic food, not born. He developed them after we gave him certain, immunizations.
Yeah, totally.
I tried telling the doctor, I kept on telling the doctor what had happened. This kid could eat this before, and then after this particular shot, he can't eat it anymore. Like, I literally had EpiPen hospital.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was already deconstructing in terms of trust in government, trust in medical, because I went down the rabbit holes. And this is like 2006. So I was already deconstructing a bit, but it was 2020. I was like, what is going on? I was sure it was something that had to do with something that wasn't good for us, but I didn't understand what. So I started going down rabbit holes. And then I realized, wait, that Satan is actually real. Like, to me, I thought Satan and the devil was kind of like a Christian fever dream, kind of like crazy. Like, okay, maybe in the Garden of, maybe like, you imagine him with horns, but Satan wasn't any more involved in our lives than God was. They're having
Sure.
they have their battle out there sometime. It's in the Bible, and they're just kind of letting us do our thing here, and I did believe in the concept of purgatory as well. So, but then after I went through all these rabbit holes, I'm like, wait, if Satan is real and it's not just that Christians are crazy, how are we still here? Because I see that something's happening right now where they're trying to take away our freedom. Like, they're trying to take away where you can go, what you can do, even if you can breathe. I'm extremely claustrophobic. So the idea of putting a mask on my face was just unbearable, especially on an airplane.
Yeah.
Yet nobody had any compassion towards me in those days. They thought I was making it up. And even if I was like stuffed up because I have allergies and I have claustrophobia, nobody cared.
Yeah.
It was just callousness. And I'm like, okay, I started to realize there's something spiritual happening. And because people were not acting normal.
Yeah.
And so as I went down those rabbit holes, I said, okay, so if Satan is real and he's here actively trying to take away our breath, even our breath, everything, then God must also be real and active, because otherwise, how are we still living in our homes? How do we still have water? How are we still, how are we still doing anything if God were not interceding, you know? And so that then led me to scrolling as I was through social media, and I started bumping into content, social media content, people talking about Jesus.
Sure.
People talking about their testimonies. I can't remember who. They don't know me, I don't know them. But there was just content that I was seeing that started softening the ground a bit.
Yeah.
And until one day I'm looking at a piece of content, and I literally, this is on my computer screen, and I literally see Jesus's face behind the content. And I'm like, wait, my eyes are playing tricks on me. What's going on? Because it was a content, it was like a testimony, or was something about Jesus. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking maybe it's kind of like a trick where they put something, those things that they put that you can kind of like look at things a different way, and it just looks like an image, or people see.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a trick. This is like a visual illusion, but it's like breathing. Okay, so when somebody's breathing, that you can see movement.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, I'm starting to freak out here. So I scroll past, and then I come back to see if it went away. It's like, but then somehow I know, I'm like, it's Jesus. I'm thinking to myself, it's like I was like Willy Wonka in the chocolate factory, have found a golden ticket. And I'm like, I can't tell anybody this, because like Jesus knows I exist, that I'm actually alive, that I'm here. Oh my God. Oh my God. I was so excited. It was like I was kicking my feet up in the air. And
So awesome.
I'm like, because some people have like this open vision, or Jesus walks into, I didn't have any of that. He just showed up on my screen on social media in a piece of content, like literally. And I'm freaking out so bad, but I didn't tell my husband. I couldn't tell anybody. I couldn't even explain it. I'm just able to right now explain it, but I knew everybody was going to think I was nuts. So I didn't tell anybody. And maybe a couple of days later, I actually heard audible voice say my name, but it wasn't just I heard, it was I felt. Do you know when somebody whispers in your ear, you can feel the air, the
Yeah.
word
Right.
on your ear? That's exactly what I felt. And I'm like, Jesus.
It's amazing.
I get out again. I'm like, oh my God, Jesus is talking to me. So, but again, I didn't really tell anybody that, because until I started meeting Christians, they're the only ones who could actually believe me. But if I told anybody who wasn't a Christian, they'd be like, okay, she's lost her mind. Definitely. Because if you told me when I was secular, I'd be like, that thing about people hearing God, and I'm like, I thought people were just crazy, or they were just lying. So I knew what people would think. And I was just so excited. And I went and read a Bible, I bought a Bible, and I tried to start reading, but I'm like, I just wasn't understanding, and because I converted, it just happened here in this office by myself. I didn't have any mentorship.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what I was supposed to be doing. And I was stuck in that limbo for quite some time, because I wasn't hearing Jesus. I wasn't anything. Nothing was happening. I felt like I was just like stuck. And it occurred to me in April 2023, this year, that I'm supposed to be actually reading the Bible every day and praying. I don't know how I caught that big idea. Somehow, maybe somebody posted something online. I'm like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. So I started reading the Bible as best as I could. I started praying, which I still feel like my prayers are like really inadequate. Like compared to some people, how they just get up there and they can just flow. My prayers are like, a 3-year-old. But then I think I saw The Chosen, where Jesus told somebody, you don't have to have these prayers. You could just be in your quiet in your room and just say this, or something like that. I'm like, okay, so maybe my prayers aren't that bad as long as I do them. And as soon as a while after I started praying and reading the Bible is when God again spoke to me, but it wasn't audible this time. it was just like, how would I say? It was like an idea that popped out of the nowhere. And then it was an idea that just wouldn't go away, that kept just like pressing on me. And the idea was this, that because I was working in this online business space and I was working with people repurposing their content for social media, I was working with a few, subject matter experts, which I really enjoy because I love interviewing people and extracting their content where they don't have time to do it, and just creating social media content for them. But I was also working with some people that were in the new age. And right about then, I had some unusual interest from people in the new age, which were pretty advanced. I'd say pretty advanced witches type of thing.
Yeah, sure.
People into some big time witchcraft stuff. And right there, God stopped me in my tracks. He said, because I thought it was okay as long as I'm not doing it. Like,
Right.
I'm not, but then it was a strong conviction that it doesn't matter that you're not doing it. You are, if you're lending your skills to this, then you are coming into agreement with it, is what I felt. So I had to have a couple of conversations with people and tell them that I just couldn't work with them because I was scared of having these conversations. But I had to come clean and say, I'm a Christian and I'm not trying to be judgmental. It's just that it conflicts with my beliefs and I cannot promote this type of work. I can work with someone who happens to have different beliefs, that is new age, and I can work with you as a person, but I cannot help you because your business is new age. I cannot promote this.
Right.
And so, pretty much I just like dropped almost on my classes. And I was like, God, I don't know what's going to happen. Luckily, my husband has never depended on me to pay the bills around here because he would have not been happy about that. But I'm like, God, I'm just trusting you. And then God came back and gave me the idea of, not the idea, he gave me the command to start this podcast called The Influential Christian Entrepreneur, gave me the name, gave me the whole idea behind it. And the whole idea is to talk about faith and work. We've always been told to society that we don't mix faith and business, but as Christians, we be listening to this? It's the world telling us that we aren't supposed to mix our faith and business because of fear of, oh, we're going to offend somebody, or it doesn't look professional, or faith is a personal thing that you leave at home. To challenge that and ask people what they think about it, and if Christian entrepreneurs, and based on what their answer is, how do they implement it if they do? And so I don't want to keep going. I'm going to let you interject there because I can go on for 3 hours. So yeah.
No, it's so good.
Yeah.
I think that's so good. When you're talking about how you heard from the Lord, everyone hears differently. And so that's one thing I do want to say. I was reading a book here recently, Dallas Willard, Hearing God, and he talks about how people can be sure if they're hearing from the Lord or not, because a lot of people don't have the privilege of hearing like an auditory, like, or like a visual, whatever. I will sometimes, like when I'm praying, like even like prophetically for people, like I will get words, but I won't like hear them. I'll see them in like my mind, and it's like it's from him because it hits differently, and Dallas explains a lot of that in the book, which actually helped me realize, like, hey, I'm not just hopeful that that's something from him, even though it's really encouraging and it's something that person needs to hear at that moment in time that I had no idea that they needed to hear at that moment in time, all these things. But there's other things pointing to that's definitely the Lord speaking, but we even sometimes have doubts. But then, you read encouraging material like that's backed up by different scripture explaining, hey, this is why this is. And so that's awesome. And I'm excited that you had that like as an initial thing. But you're talking about praying and you're like, yeah, sometimes I don't know. honestly, one of the best books I've read or actually listened to an Audible on praying was by Pete Gregg, How to Pray. And it just talks about just doing it because God just desires so much that he desires us so much. He just wants to have relationship. And when we're praying, it doesn't have to be some lengthy thing that's really eloquent or whatever. It doesn't have to be any of that. It can literally just be we're just expressing our true feelings about a scenario that's either wonderful or not wonderful or whatever. And then I remember being younger and listening to this televangelist talk about something that happens when you're just being honest with God. And he said one of the best prayers you could ever pray ever is, and then he got really quiet and then he just yelled, "Help!" right into the microphone. That's a full prayer, right? Right on its own.
That's a
not
good one.
not some well thought out, long piece of content or anything like that you're trying to, make perfect and send to God. It's not that
Mhm.
at all. It's just you're being honest with where you're at, and that's what he wants. He wants a genuine relationship. So
Yeah.
I think it sounds like it's awesome. It's going awesome. And
Yeah.
yeah, but maybe we can go into that, or like how you've been like walking this out, because you made this tough decision to like say, hey, you know what, I can't serve this client base anymore. And I mean, I've followed you with a lot of your stuff, and you're doing great, but like maybe you could tell listeners about like, how it's been walking that out and what that looks like, and what you're excited about now.
Yeah, it hasn't been easy, I'll tell you that, because like a certain client base, you got to remember most of the people in the new age tend to be women.
Mhm.
Um, and it's a completely different mindset. It's spiritual, but just not the same type of spiritual, right? But they don't realize yet. So, after I started the podcast, I'm like, okay, God, so I mean, is this what I'm gonna do? I'm fine with doing it, but is this like what I'm gonna do? Like just about it, because I have no idea. Like I'm not a podcaster. I have no idea how to monetize this, and I don't know what I'm doing. Um, and then I can't. I wish I was as good as you, like knowing dates. Like I didn't write these dates down. All I know is like a few weeks into planning the podcast, it was strongly pressed upon me. And I'm learning now that when God speaks to me, one of the ways is like I can see words, like the
Yeah.
word or a sentence in
Yeah,
my head, right?
totally.
Kind of like somebody typing on a computer type of thing. I don't know. It's kind of like the words. And so that my new type of client that I'm going to work with are Christian men who are business leaders, um, middle age, you know.
Sure.
Um, and I was like, I was like, what? I'm thinking to myself, I made this up. Like I made this up because I was working with I don't even know any men who are Christian business leaders. And I was like, why? I didn't understand why of it. So I tried to ignore it for like 2 months. I tried to
Sure.
ignore it because I was sure that I had just made that up myself. Like, I don't understand why it would work with men and not just everybody who are Christians. Made no sense to me. And I tried to ignore it. I went off on vacation to France in July. And then when I came back from vacation, the day I came back, I ate a plum of all things with my food, which I'm not allergic to plums. But this plum happened to be a cross between a plum and an apricot, which I'm not allergic to neither one of them. And I had an anaphylactic reaction that
Huh.
took me a while to recognize because I had never had anaphylaxis in my life. Although
Yeah.
I'm familiar with it because I've been dealing with my son, and that by the time I realized that what I was having was an anaphylactic reaction, I was in my kitchen looking in the kitchen drawer for my son's EpiPen because I realized, oh my gosh, I'm having a allergic. And then I don't know what happened. Next thing I remember is, my son screaming, my husband screaming. Apparently, I had passed out, um, and they had to take me to the hospital. My blood pressure was so low, I literally almost died. Like it was hard for them to get my blood pressure back up. And in that process, I realized like I literally could have stepped out of my body and had no idea what had happened. I don't remember falling. I don't remember blacking out. I literally, last thing I remember was me just having my hands in the drawer looking for this. And it made me realize how fragile our life is. Like, we're always thinking like, when we die, it's kind of like ahead of us, right?
Right. Yeah.
Or the other world, the spiritual world is kind of like ahead of us somewhere else, but it's like right here. And all it is you, something happening in your body, almost like snapping a hair, and you step out of your body and you don't even know it. Suddenly you wake up somewhere else.
Yeah.
And
That's really good.
That somewhere else better be heaven.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because
what you're saying.
You know, after I became a Christian, I'm like, this is some serious stuff. Like, almost everybody I know is gonna go to hell. And it's so easy to die. We're here. It's a miracle. The only thing that sustains us,
it's a miracle that we're here. Yeah.
It is God is the only, yet we disrespect him, take him for granted.
Yep.
We have no fear of God, yet our lives is hanging by a thread, you know. And that just blew my mind. I'm like, I better do something about this. I better go tell people, do something, because I don't know, maybe this is what God was telling me. And so after that, I started taking it seriously. Like, okay, so God, what is it that I'm supposed to do with these men you're telling me about? Oh, I got your message. What am I supposed to do? And it all has to do with, you know, the marketplace, Brent.
Yeah.
You know, 165 million people have come into the online space to become creators, to do business online in the past 3 years. And as you probably know, 8 to 10 times more conversions are happening in the marketplace than at church. You know,
I didn't know it was that drastic, but I've heard obviously your story, but then others here in the last couple of years, but that's amazing to hear that.
Yeah. And so all of these people are out here hanging online, scrolling for hope is really what people are doing.
Yeah.
And we Christians are being quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And men in particular, who are the leader, if you look at the biblical view, right? Men are the leaders, you know, men are the leaders, but they have been attacked so much in the past few years, especially men in leadership, you know, because that spirit of Jezebel goes after the men in leadership because they have influence.
Yeah.
Okay. And, you know, men have been attacked so much in the past few years with this toxic masculinity, with this, all of this stuff, that they've just kind of, like Elijah, hidden in a cage. But we need to, men need to, you know, take hold of their spiritual authority, Christian men.
Yeah.
And do something, speak, share your testimonies, use the influence that you have to leverage your influence to reach more people, because, you know, the enemy's doing a great job at leveraging his people of influence on media, on, you know, the digital platforms, online, everywhere, TV, but we're not doing that as much.
100%.
Yeah. But these men probably aren't going to be the ones to, they'll tell you their stories all day, but they're not going to sit down and write them and post them.
Yeah.
So that's it. And, you know, part of my trepidation was like, why me, God? Like, okay, you're telling me to work with Christian men, especially middle-aged, which are probably a little bit more conservative, but knowing my background, and just to give you you already know this, just to give you an idea of my background. And my background was pretty unorthodox. You know, my father was a literal drug dealer, like a gangster. So much so that they made a movie about him in 2007 with Denzel Washington and Russell Crowe called American Gangster.
Yep.
That's how notorious he was. So I'm like,
That still blows my mind.
wait, what do I have in common with these men? And nothing at all. Like, I did not have that type of father figure in my life at all, you know? And so but I just trusted God, and I'm trying to be obedient. And know that even though I don't know the steps or what lies ahead, I'm just walking the way that He tells me to walk. And so that's my story. And I think that we Christians need to do more with the tools that we have. You don't have to be a CEO to take your story, your testimony, and share it online. And your testimony is not just when you met Christ or when you came to Christ. Most people think that their testimony is the moment they came to Christ. You have a testimony every day.
Yeah.
Christ is working in your life. Share
True.
that and spread the gospel. So
So
that's
good.
that.
No, that's so good. So awesome. I think that what God's put in your heart to do is just so timely for where society is right now, because who better? I mean this, like, who better than a woman of like where you come from to come along and combat all of the noise and be like, hey, let's empower some of these guys that should take their spiritual headship and go out and fight the good fight. Because uh, for the longest time, I was concerned about my brand image on not wanting. I would tell people, hey, I'm a Christian, quietly at a barbecue, but like, not like I wouldn't want to go online and start posting scripture verses and telling people my testimony, especially not the testimony that I had on May 31st. That's, a lot of people, it's one thing to be like, yeah, I follow Jesus. And another thing being like, I was delivered from a spirit of witchcraft and lizards and, like weird, like stuff that I never thought I would say out loud before it happened, because I'm like, that stuff's crazy, but like, it's not. And I know, because, you go through something like that and you're just like, that happened. And so I respect you so much for just, what you're doing in your obedience to carry out God's call in your life.
Yeah,
And
and I respect you because um you got over that. I'm finding that a lot of Christians are there in that place where they fear messing up their reputation, their image, especially if they have a lot to lose because they've built a $300 million company. Like, they have everything to lose, but they also have everything to gain.
oh my
And
goodness.
so we have
Yeah.
to know that if you consider yourself to be a follower of Christ, you have to be willing to put everything on the line.
Yeah.
And if you have a fear of doing that, then you have to look into your heart, because God knows hearts.
Yeah.
And we can fool ourselves, we can fool everybody else, but you can't fool Jesus. So
Yeah. So true. It's so true. And, at the end of the day, we're not taking any of it with us. And when we get into as God's kingdom comes down to earth, and as we transition to the next stage of our being, it's like, whatever we give up in the name of growing the kingdom, or
mhm.
just put it out there and stake it on the line for him, it's like, he's going to take care of us,
Yeah.
regardless of whether it's like a direct repayment. And that's what I think a lot of people get. It's not necessarily repayment in money, but like, here's the
Mhm.
thing. He's the creator of the universe. So whatever reason people are going after, for me, it was childhood wounds. I was chasing just productivity in the name of making money, simply so I could say I'm providing for my family. I was trying to fill holes from childhood that
Yeah.
were black holes. I couldn't put enough stuff in them. I couldn't put enough businesses in these holes to fill the painful points.
Yeah.
And if I didn't get anything for basically like staking I haven't lost stuff, but let's say I do. It's like, I guess there's certain things that I've lost, but there's a lot more that I've gained in other areas that are so much more powerful, that can fill those holes. And that's where I
Mhm.
think people need testimonies like that. They
Yeah.
need stuff like that.
Right.
But
Why we got to share? Why you got to share your testimony? I have to share mine,
yeah,
because you're going to encourage other people. Like, dang, this is what I need to be doing. Because if
that's
we all
right.
stay quiet, we got to stop being reactive Christians, and we have to become proactive, because we've let this go on for so long. Is why we are where we are, and we got to fight back.
It's so
So
true. It's so
yeah.
true. And here's the thing. If you're watching this, if you're listening to this right now, I'm going to put in the show description, there's going to be links where you can link up with Francine, and I'd encourage you to reach out to her. If you're an executive, C-suite, whatever, you want to message her, reach out to her about her mission and what God's put in her heart to do. It's just a really special time, and she's helping so many people. So first off, Francine, thank you so much for being here on the show today. This is just such an honor to have you, and so excited about what you're doing to grow the kingdom. Everyone,
Thank you.
thank you for tuning into Change today. Look forward to seeing you all the next time.
Take care. Bye.